A black woman steps into an upscale restaurant, expecting nothing more than a peaceful meal. But within moments, she is met with hostility from the very person in charge. The manager's cold demeanor and subtle racism quickly reveal that this isn't just about a reservation. It's about power, belonging, and exclusion. Welcome to Tao, where we bring you powerful tales of defiance and justice. Naomi Carter, a self-made businesswoman who built her empire from the ground up, enters Wellington's fine dining expecting a quiet evening. However, as she approaches the hostess stand, she is met with a condescending refusal. The manager, Thomas Whitmore, dismisses her reservation without a second glance, leaving her stunned but resolute. This wasn't just an overbooked table. It was the quiet, familiar sting of discrimination that so many have faced before. But Naomi isn't the type to walk away quietly. As the tension rises, she remains calm and collected, refusing to let Thomas's behavior go unchallenged. With the entire room watching, she decides to stand her ground, sending a message that resonates far beyond that evening. What happens next will have you questioning the hidden forces of power, prejudice, and the courage it takes to defy them. Naomi Carter had always understood the value of standing tall in a room full of judgment. As a successful businesswoman, she had earned every accolade, building her investment firm from the ground up. There was nothing she couldn't handle, except the weight of the subtle but unmistakable prejudice that had followed her for years. Tonight, she had expected a simple, quiet dinner at one of the city's most prestigious restaurants, Wellington's Fine Dining, where the air smelled of rich wine and refined luxury. What she hadn't anticipated was a moment that would test her resolve, her patience, and her belief in her own strength. The evening had started like any other. As Naomi walked through the door, the eyes of the well-dressed patrons turned toward her, their curiosity barely concealed behind their crystal wine glasses. Her heels clicked confidently on the marble floor, echoing off the walls as she passed. She was no stranger to this kind of attention. The luxury car parked just outside, and the custom jewelry she wore were symbols of her hard-earned success. Yet, as she approached the hostess stand, she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. Thomas Whitmore, the middle-aged manager behind the stand, eyed her with a sharp, dismissive look. His tight smile didn't reach his eyes, and his stance was far more rigid than professional courtesy required. "Can I help you?" he asked in a clipped tone, his voice barely hiding the underlying tension. "I have a reservation," Naomi replied, keeping the calm that had taken years to perfect in the face of such subtle hostility. "Under Carter, 8 p.m. Thomas didn't even glance at the reservation book. He folded his arms across his chest and exhaled sharply, as though the mere presence of Naomi had made the air more difficult to breathe. "We're fully booked tonight," he said, his tone flat. Naomi blinked, confused. She had made her reservation a week ago, and just that afternoon, she had received a confirmation. She wasn't going to back down, not when she knew she belonged here just as much as anyone else. "But I received the confirmation earlier today," she said slowly, her voice steady but laced with disbelief. "And I see an empty table right there." Her eyes flicked to the pristine table by the window, untouched, the white linen still glowing under the dim lights. Thomas's gaze narrowed as he shifted uncomfortably. "That table's reserved," he muttered, clearly lying. Naomi's pulse quickened, but she held her ground. She had been in this situation before, different restaurant, different time, but it was always the same dance. A dance she refused to participate in any longer. "May I speak to the owner?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. Thomas smirked. That was all the confirmation she needed. He wasn't going to let this go easily. "I handle all customer concerns," he said, his voice now tinged with condescension. "I'd still prefer to speak with them," she insisted, never breaking eye contact. His patience was wearing thin. "Miss, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." Her lips parted in disbelief as she processed the words he had so casually thrown at her. The implication was clear. She wasn't welcome here. Not because of anything she had done, but because of who she was. Before Thomas could say another word, a young waiter nervously approached, clearly uncertain about what was happening. "Miss Carter, your table is ready. Right this way," he said, his voice unsure, his eyes flicking nervously to Thomas. Naomi smiled, the faintest curve of her lips. "Thank you," she said, turning her back on Thomas and following the waiter to the table. As she sat down, she could feel the tension in the air, the way the room had shifted, the subtle murmurs of the diners around her, the way the waitstaff moved just a little more slowly as they served. All of it told her that they were watching, waiting to see how she would react, how she would handle being in a space where she had been so blatantly dismissed. But she didn't feel small. Her back straight, she placed her napkin on her lap and let her gaze wander around the room, absorbing the hushed energy. She could hear the whispers barely above the hum of conversation. A couple across the room exchanged looks. The woman's nose wrinkled slightly as her eyes flicked over to Naomi. Her husband, in his tailored suit, nodded solemnly, as if he could sense something was off but couldn't quite name it. Naomi wasn't interested in their discomfort. She was there to make a point, not just to Thomas, but to everyone in the room. She wasn't here to cower, to shrink herself for their comfort. She had earned her place at that table just as much as any of them. When the waiter returned with her wine, his hand shook slightly as he placed the glass before her. Naomi smiled. "I'll have a glass of the Chateau Margaux," she said, calm and measured. The waiter nodded, barely able to make eye contact before hurrying away. Naomi gently traced the edge of her glass, a quiet satisfaction settling in her chest. She was going to enjoy her meal, and she was going to enjoy making them all uncomfortable. The room had settled back into its rhythm when Thomas approached again. "I want to make sure you understand that our restaurant maintains a certain atmosphere," he began, his voice smooth but carrying an edge. Naomi lifted her gaze. "I'm here to enjoy my dinner." Thomas's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable because I'm dining here, or because you don't want me here?" The silence stretched between them, thick and palpable. The room was watching. The tension was heavy. Then, just as Thomas was about to speak again, a woman at a neighboring table interrupted. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, loudly enough for others to hear. Naomi turned her head, offering a polite smile. "No problem at all. Just having a discussion with the manager." Thomas, looking defeated, stepped back. "Enjoy your meal," he muttered before walking away. Naomi picked up her wine glass, swirling it slowly. "I will," she said quietly. She had won.